A murdered woman by a quiet Florida lake, a grieving mother hiding something, and a detective who discovers the victim might still be alive. Every clue pulls him deeper into a web of lies, tie syndicates, and a truth so dangerous it could cost him his life. But when the line between the dead and the living starts to blur, one question burns. Was the body in the lake ever hers at all? Stick with me till the very end to uncover the twist no one saw coming. And if you crave more gripping, cinematic true crime stories like this, hit subscribe now and leave your ideas in the comments. Your story could be next. A woman's scream shattered the quiet night, slicing through the humid air like a blade. Neighbors in the small Florida town swore they saw nothing. Just a shadow of someone running, vanishing into mangroves by the lake. By morning, the entire street was lined with police tape. The sun was barely up, but flashing red and blue lights danced across the walls of sleepy houses. Detective Daniel Cole stepped out of his car. Coffee in hand, the bitter steam curling into the dawn. He had seen bodies before, but this was different. The victim, a young Thai-American woman named Molly Radnaporn, lay lifeless beside the lake, her silk scarf tangled around her neck. In her hand, she clutched a small hand-carved spirit amulet, worn smooth, the kind her grandmother might have given her for protection. Her family ran a small Thai restaurant in town, a place where locals came for pad CEW and gossip. The moment her mother arrived, collapsing against the hood of a patrol car, the air shifted. Something in her cries cut deeper than grief. Who would do this? She kept repeating in Thai, her voice trembling, but her eyes darting toward the crowd. Daniel caught it. That flicker. That fear. She knew something. The autopsy brought more questions. No signs of forced assault. No robbery. Just a strangulation and a faint trace of jasmine oil on the scarf. The oil was a Thai brand, one not sold anywhere in the U.S., but Daniel had seen it once before, during a case years ago, involving a fake immigration identity and a staged disappearance. When he brought it up at the station, the room went quiet. Too quiet. That's when a call came in from a reporter. Someone claiming they had proof Molly was not who she said she was, that she'd been living under a false name for nearly a decade. And the kicker? The caller hung up before giving their name. Daniel stared at the silent phone on his desk. If Molly wasn't who she said she was, then who exactly had been killed by the lake? The question dug into Daniel's mind like a hook. He pulled Molly's file from the evidence table, spreading documents across his desk. Birth certificate from Bangkok, immigration record from 2013, Social Security number issued 2 years later. All official, all clean, too clean. He drove to her family's restaurant that afternoon, the scent of lemongrass and fried garlic filling the air as the lunch crowd murmured over bowls of soup. Molly's mother, Noi, stood behind the counter, smiling faintly for customers, but her hands trembled as she counted change. When she saw Daniel, her smile faltered. "We already told the police everything," she whispered, glancing at the door as if someone might be listening. "I'm not here for your statement," Daniel said, lowering his voice. "I'm here because the records don't add up. If Molly was hiding something, I need to know before the wrong person finds out." Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't answer. Instead, she disappeared into the kitchen, returning with a small tin box. Inside, folded so many times the paper was worn at the creases, was a faded Thai newspaper clipping. It was dated 2012. The headline in Thai script read, "Bangkok heiress missing after family murder." The photograph beneath it froze Daniel in place. Molly, younger but unmistakable, standing beside 2 older men in expensive suits. "She wasn't just my daughter," Noi whispered, her voice shaking. "She was the only one who survived." Daniel's mind raced. An unsolved massacre in Bangkok. A girl smuggled into the U.S. under a false identity. If that was true, it meant someone had been hunting her for over a decade. And maybe, just maybe, they had finally found her. The thought tightened in Daniel's chest as he left the restaurant, the humid air pressing heavy against his skin. If this was a revenge killing, then whoever had done it wouldn't stop. They wouldn't risk loose ends. Back at the precinct, he dug into international case files, his screen filling with images of opulent Thai estates, gilded Buddhist shrines, and police crime scene photos smeared with shadows and blood. The Bangkok massacre case was as brutal as it was mysterious. No suspect arrested, no motive confirmed, but whispers in the report spoke of family feuds over a vast real estate empire. One name appeared again and again, Vikhai Kittapong, business rival. Suspected in the murders but never charged. A man known for disappearing when trouble came too close. And then Daniel found it, a grainy security photo from a Miami airport, dated 3 weeks ago. Vikhai, stepping off a flight from Bangkok. The timestamp on the image made Daniel's stomach drop. Molly had been alive then. He picked up his phone to alert the task force. But before he could dial, a small envelope slid under his office door. No return address. No markings. Inside was a single photograph. It showed Molly, standing in the same lakeside spot where her body was found. But she was alive, smiling. And in the corner of the frame, half in shadow, was a man's hand resting on her shoulder. A hand wearing a jade ring carved in the shape of a coiled serpent. Daniel's pulse hammered as he turned the photo over, searching for clues. On the back, written in neat block letters, were 3 words, "You're too late." He stared at the jade serpent ring. It wasn't just jewelry. It was a symbol. Years ago, while working a trafficking case out Los Angeles, he'd seen that exact design. The men who wore belonged to an underground Thai syndicate known as Nagalwang, the Royal Serpents. They dealt in everything from illegal gambling to high-profile assassinations. If they were involved, this wasn't just about family feuds. This was organized, professional, personal. Daniel pushed back from his desk, heading straight for the evidence room. He pulled Molly's scar from its sealed bag, bringing it close enough to catch the faint, sweet trace of jasmine oil again. His gut tightened. The Nagalwang were known for leaving a scent, literally, a signature calling card. But if they had killed her, why send him this photograph? Why make it personal? He didn't have time to answer before his phone buzzed with an unlisted number. When he picked up, a man's voice, smooth and accented, spoke only one sentence. "She told me you'd find me." The line went dead. Daniel stood frozen, the words echoing in his ear long after the call ended. "She told me you'd find me." It wasn't a threat. It was a challenge, an invitation. He traced a timeline in his head. Molly had been dead for barely 48 hours, but whoever called knew his name, his role, his connection to her, which meant she'd spoken about him to someone before she died. And that meant she'd seen it coming. He replayed their brief encounters in his mind. The way she glanced over her shoulder in the restaurant weeks ago when he came in for lunch, the half-smile that didn't reach her eyes, the fact that she always sat with her back to the wall. She'd been waiting for someone, or hiding from them. Daniel pulled her phone from the evidence bag, scrolling past messages in English and Thai. Most were routine, orders to the restaurant, family chats. But one thread stood out. No name, just a number with an international code. 3 days before her death, the last message read, "They've found me. I'll be at the lake." And attached, a pin drop location. The exact spot where her body was discovered. Daniel's grip tightened on the phone. She hadn't been lured there. She had gone willingly, which meant the killer wasn't just someone from her past. They were someone she trusted enough to meet, alone, at night. Daniel leaned back in his chair, the realization sinking like a stone in his gut. Someone close. Someone inside her circle. He printed the text exchange and pinned it to his board, right under the photo of Molly alive at the lake. The smiling face. The serpent ring. The shadow that seemed almost deliberate, as if the person wanted to be recognized without giving everything away. He needed names. A quick cross-check of Molly's recent contacts showed one number popping up again and again, registered to a Saren Chaiziri. Thai-American, age 38, works as a freight broker at a Miami shipping company known for losing cargo. No criminal record on paper, but flagged twice by Homeland Security for suspicious container manifests. Daniel dug deeper, pulling customs reports. 2 weeks ago, a cargo container from Bangkok had arrived under Saren's name. The content were listed as religious artifacts, but there was no follow-up inspection, no paperwork showing where they went. He picked up the phone and called the shipping yard, his voice clipped. "Put me through to Saren Chaiziri." The operator hesitated. He's not here, detective. He's out on personal leave. Daniel's jaw tightened. When did he leave? A pause. 2 days ago. The same night Molly died. Before Daniel could press further, a notification popped up on his screen. An email from an encrypted account. No subject line, just an attachment. He clicked it. It was a video. Molly alive, sitting in a dimly lit room, her hands folded on the table. Eyes calm, voice steady. If you're watching this, Detective Cole, she said, then I didn't make it out. Daniel's breath caught as the video played on. Molly leaned closer to the camera, her face half in shadow, her voice barely above a whisper. They'll tell you I was running, that I was hiding from them. But the truth is, I was hiding from someone here. Her eyes flicked to the side, as if listening for footsteps. You have to understand, I didn't choose this life. My family's death, she paused, swallowing hard, wasn't just about money. It was about something I saw, something I wasn't supposed to. A faint creak in the background made her flinch, but she forced herself to keep speaking. You'll find the proof in the container. Not the artifacts, the lining. Look under the false panels. But be careful, detective, once you open it. You can't close it again. The sound of a door opening off camera made her eyes widen. They're here. The screen went black. Daniel sat frozen for a beat, the words false panels echoing in his head. He reached for the phone to call the Port Authority, but before his fingers touched the keypad, the precinct lights flickered. And then the fire alarm began to scream. The piercing wail sent officers spilling into the hallways, papers fluttering to the floor in the rush. Daniel stayed seated for a moment, instinct telling him this wasn't an accident. The timing was too perfect. The email, the video, the container, and now a forced evacuation. If someone wanted to keep him from making that call, this was how they'd do it. He grabbed the flash drive he'd used to save the video, slipped it into his pocket, and pushed through the chaos toward the back stairwell. The smell hit him before he reached the exit. Not smoke, but something sharp, chemical, biting at the edges of his throat. By the time he hit the ground floor, the alley was empty except for a black sedan idling across the street. Its windows were tinted dark, too dark to see inside. Daniel's instinct screamed at him to turn away, but the back passenger window slid down just enough for him to see a hand resting on the frame. A hand wearing the jade serpent ring. The driver's side door opened, and a man stepped out slowly, like he had all the time in the world. Saren Chizeri. You've been busy, detective, he said with a faint smile. His voice was calm, conversational, like they were meeting over coffee instead of in a deserted alley. You killed her, Daniel said. Saren's smile didn't falter. She was already dead the moment she came back into view. The only thing left was to decide who found the body. Daniel's hand inched toward his holster, but Saren lifted a small object into the air. Something that made Daniel stop cold. Molly's spirit amulet. She wanted you to have this, Saren said, stepping closer. But not yet. Daniel's muscles tightened, every instinct telling him this was a trap. Saren twirled the amulet between his fingers, the small carved figure catching the dull light of the alley. You think you're chasing me, Saren said, his voice smooth, but the truth is, you've been chasing her story, and she wrote it for you long before we met. Daniel kept his eyes locked on the amulet. What do you mean? She knew this would end one of two ways, and she made her choice. Saren's smile thinned. The container? You'll open it. You'll find what she wanted you to find. But when you do, you'll have to ask yourself if you really want in the light. The sound of a distant siren cut through the air, growing louder. Saren didn't even glance toward it. Instead, he stepped close enough for Daniel to see the faint trace of jasmine oil on his collar. I'm going to leave this here, Saren said, placing the amulet on the ground between them. You can pick it up when you're ready to hear the truth. But be careful, detective. Truth isn't always justice. He turned and slid back into the sedan, the door closing with a dull thud. The car pulled away without urgency, disappearing around the corner just as 2 patrol units screeched into the alley. Daniel stared at the amulet on the asphalt. A small strip of paper was tucked into its cord. In neat, cramped handwriting, it read, Pier 16, midnight. Come alone Asterisk, asterisk. The paper felt damp in Daniel's palm, the faint scent of incense clinging to it like a ghost. Pier 16. Midnight. He glanced at his watch. 7 hours. 7 hours to decide whether he was walking into a meeting or an execution at the precinct. The fire alarm had already been dismissed as a false trigger, but the chemical smell still lingered in the halls. He ignored the chatter of officers and went straight to the evidence locker. The scarf, the phone, and now the amulet. 3 pieces of a puzzle that seemed to rearrange itself every time he thought he saw the full picture. On his desk, he unfolded the shipping records for Saren's container again. Pier 16 wasn't just a location. It was where the container had been unloaded, which meant if Saren wanted him there, it was either to show him something or to make sure he never saw it all. As the night bled in, Daniel drove to the docks. The water was black under the sodium lights, waves slapping against barnacled pylons. Cranes loomed overhead like skeletal arms. Pier 16 was almost deserted, except for a single shipping container sitting at the far end. No workers, no guards, just the groan of metal as the wind pushed against it. Daniel's hand hovered near his gun as he approached. The container doors were unlocked. Inside, the air was stale, thick with dust and the faint perfume of jasmine oil. Crates lined the walls, all labeled religious artifacts. He stepped closer to the nearest crate, running his hand along the wood until he felt it an uneven edge, a false panel. He pried it back slowly, revealing not gold, not statues, not relics, but stacks of black-bound ledgers, each stamped with the serpent emblem. Some were marked in Thai, others in English. Dates, names, numbers, and one near the top had a name written in bold ink, Molly Ratnaporn. Daniel slid the ledger out, its leather cover warm from the trapped air inside the container. Flipping it open, he found neat, meticulous handwriting in Thai, columns of numbers, and beside them, names. Some he recognized from federal watch lists. Others were local, politicians, business owners, even a retired judge. But Molly's name appeared again and again, not as a victim, but as an account holder. The amounts tied to her were massive, millions, transferred through shell companies in Singapore, the Cayman Islands, and finally, Miami. Daniel's pulse quickened. If this was true, she hadn't just been running from killers. She'd been sitting on a fortune that belonged to them, and maybe she'd been using it. Footsteps echoed down the pier, slow and deliberate. Daniel closed the ledger and slipped it under his arm, retreating into the shadows of the container. Through the crack in the door, he saw a figure approaching. Not Saren. Taller, leaner, wearing a dark windbreaker, with the hood up. The figure stopped just outside, scanning the pier before stepping inside the container. A gloved hand reached for one of the crates, prying it open with practiced ease. Daniel recognized the move. It was the same way he'd opened the false panel. Whoever this was, they knew exactly where to look. The intruder pulled out a single ledger, flipped it open, and paused. Then, almost casually, they took out a silver lighter and set the corner aflame. The fire caught fast. Daniel stepped out from the shadows, gun raised. Put it down. Now. The figure turned slowly. The hood fell back. It was Molly's mother. For a split second, Daniel thought his eyes were playing tricks on him. Noy's face was calm, almost serene in the flickering light of the burning ledger. "You shouldn't be here, detective," she said softly, as if they were back in her restaurant, sharing tea instead of standing inside a container filled with criminal evidence. Daniel took a step forward, gun steady. "You're going to explain why you're destroying the only proof that can connect the Nagalwang to Molly's death." Her gaze didn't waver. "This proof will kill more people than it will save. You don't understand what you're holding. These names," she gestured to crates, "they're not just criminals. They're everyone. People in power. People you trust. Burn one book, and they'll erase 10 more. The only thing this ledger will do is sign your death warrant." The flames crept higher, smoke curling toward the ceiling of the container. Daniel's voice hardened. "Molly trusted me to find the truth. And right now, you're standing in the middle of it, setting it on fire." Noi's expression cracked for just a moment, grief flickering in her eyes. "She didn't want you to know the whole truth," she said, almost a whisper. "Because the day you do, you'll have to choose between justice and survival." She dropped the burning ledger onto the others, and the fire roared to life, heat blasting against Daniel's face. In the distance, the sound of crackling flames, a low rumble grew louder, the unmistakable growl of an approaching engine. Noi's eyes flicked toward the pier entrance. "They're here." Daniel's instinct screamed to move. The orange glow from the burning ledgers painted inside of the container like a furnace, shadows flickering over Noi's face. Outside, headlights cut through the fog. Sweeping across the pier as a black SUV rolled to a stop. The engine idled, low and menacing. "Noi," Daniel said, stepping closer, his gun still up. "We can get out of here. But you need to tell me everything. Now." Her eyes stayed locked on the SUV. "There's no time." The rear doors opened, and two men stepped out, broad-shouldered, dressed in dark suits, their movements sharp and deliberate. Daniel recognized the serpent emblem pinned to their lapels. Nagowong. The first man reached into his jacket. Daniel's muscles coiled, ready, but Noi's voice cut through the moment. "They're not here for me," she said, her voice shaking now. "They're here for you." Daniel's pulse spiked. "Why?" Noi looked at him like she was about to answer, like she'd been holding back something vital all along, and then the first shot rang out, shattering the night. The crack of the gunshot ricocheted through the metal walls of the container, deafening in the confined space. Daniel dug behind a stack of crates, splinters biting into his arms as a second shot tore through the wood inches from his head. Noi was already moving, low and fast, slipping through the smoke and shadows toward the rear of the container. She didn't look back. Outside, heavy boots pounded against the pier, the men closing in. Another burst of gunfire rattled the metal doors, sparks flashing in the darkness. Daniel's training took over. He slid his gun around the crate, firing two controlled shots toward the silhouettes at the entrance. One man ducked, the other stumbled, cursing in Thai. The fire roared higher, heat pressing against Daniel's back. The smoke was thick now, stinging his eyes and clawing at his lungs. Somewhere behind the crates, which splintered, a back panel breaking loose. Noi's voice, low but urgent, cut through the chaos. "This way." Daniel didn't hesitate. He shoved through the narrow gap, dropping into the cold night air at the container's far side. They landed behind a row of stacked shipping pallets, hidden from the pier's main view. The SUV's engine revved again, and Daniel caught sight of a third figure stepping out of the shadows near the driver's door. Not Saren, taller, leaner, moving with an easy, deliberate grace that made the other men seem clumsy. As the figure stepped into the light, Daniel's stomach turned. It was the same man from a photograph with his hand on Molly's shoulder, and he was smiling. The man's smile wasn't warm. It was the kind that carried knowledge, leverage, and an unshakable sense of control. He glanced toward the burning container, then to Daniel, as if measuring the distance between them. "You've been busy, Detective Cole," he called out, his voice calm, carrying easily over the crackle of flames and the churn of the SUV's engine. "But you're asking the wrong questions." Daniel tightened his grip on his gun, scanning for angles, for cover, for any opening. "Why don't you enlighten me?" The man stepped closer, the serpent ring on his hand, catching the pier lights. "You keep looking for Molly's killer, when the real story," he tapped the side of his temple, almost playfully, "is why she came back at all." Noi stiffened beside Daniel, her breath quickening. The man's eyes shifted to her. "I see you've been keeping our detective company, Noi. Does he know yet, or are you still protecting him?" Daniel's mind raced. Protecting me? Before he could press, the man reached into his jacket, not for a weapon, but for something small and square. He tossed it underhand, and it landed a few feet from Daniel with a dull slap. A passport. Daniel stepped forward, kicking it open with his boot. The photo inside made his blood run cold. It was Molly, but the name wasn't hers, and the issue date was 3 months ago. The man's smile deepened. "You see, Detective, Molly didn't die by that lake." For a heartbeat, Daniel couldn't process the words. The fire, the autopsy, the grieving mother. It all crashed against the possibility the man had just dropped in his lap. Noy's voice was barely a whisper. Don't listen to him. But Daniel heard the tremor in it, the kind of tremor that comes when a lie is about to split wide open. The man tilted his head, watching Daniel's reaction like a predator studying prey. The body you found was meant for you. A message. She wanted you to stop looking. Daniel's throat felt tight. If she's alive, where is she? The man's smile thinned. Somewhere safe for now. But safety costs, detective. And she's running out of credit. From behind him, one of the suited men barked something in Thai, urgency in his tone. The man with the serpent ring glanced over his shoulder, then back to Daniel. I'll make you a trade, he said. You bring me the ledgers that woman tried to burn. His gaze cut sharply toward Noy. And I'll bring you to Molly. Daniel didn't answer. His gun was steady, but his mind was a storm. If Molly was alive, then the entire investigation had been staged from the start. Every clue, every lead, every tear orchestrated. The man's smile returned, faint and cold. Midnight, tomorrow. Same pier. You decide what's worth more, your case or the girl you couldn't save. He turned, sliding into the SUV. The engine roared, tires spitting gravel as the vehicle vanished into the night, leaving only smoke, firelight, and the pounding in Daniel's ears. When Daniel finally looked at Noy, her eyes weren't on him. They were on the passport, and she was crying. The tears streaking Noy's face weren't the quiet kind. They shook her whole frame, her breath hitching in shallow bursts. Daniel crouched beside her, keeping his voice low. Noy, is he telling the truth? She pressed a trembling hand to her mouth, eyes fixed on the passport, like it might burn her as she touched it. I buried my daughter, she whispered. I saw her body. Daniel studied her, or what they wanted you to see. Her eyes darted up to his, fear cutting through the grief. If she's alive, they'll use her. She knows things, names, accounts, routes, things that could destroy them if she talks. They won't let her live unless, she trailed off, shaking her head. Unless what? Daniel pushed. Noy swallowed hard. Unless she give them something bigger. And now, she glanced toward the smoldering container. The fire mostly choked out, but the air still heavy with smoke. There's only one thing left big enough. The ledgers, Daniel said. Noy nodded, a tear sliding down her cheek. If you hand them over, she might walk away alive. But you won't. Not once they know what you've seen. Daniel's gaze drifted to the dark water lapping against the pier, the cold salt air stinging his lungs. If Molly was alive, tomorrow night might be the only chance to get her back. But bringing those ledgers would also be signing his own death warrant. Daniel stood there for a long moment, the weight of the decision pressing down like the tide. The ledgers were locked away now, stashed in a place only he knew, but their contents burned in his mind. Page after page of corruption that reached further than he'd ever imagined. Names that could topple careers. Names that could start wars. Noy's voice broke the silence. You can't save her if you're dead, detective. Daniel met her gaze. And if I walk away, she dies anyway. She looked away, her hands twisting in the hem of her blouse. Then you'll have to play their game better than they do. The wind shifted, carrying the faint sound of sirens approaching the pier. Daniel knew what would come next. Uniforms swarming, questions he couldn't answer without implicating her or himself. We're not here when they arrive, he said firmly, pulling Noy toward the shadows. They slipped through the maze of stacked containers, the pier shrinking behind them until only the glow of the smoldering fire remained. By the time they reached his car, the plan had already started to form. Fragmented, dangerous, but the only one that gave them both a chance. He would meet them tomorrow night. He would bring something that looked like the ledgers, but wasn't. And in that window, he'd find a way to get to Molly. Noy sat in the passenger seat, silent, staring out at the dark water. Daniel started the engine, the hum filling the quiet. As they pulled away, he caught a glimpse of movement in the rear-view mirror. A single figure standing at the edge of the pier, half hidden in the fog. The posture was unmistakable. It was Molly, watching him go. Daniel's foot hovered over the brake, instinct screaming to turn back. But the fog swallowed her before he could be sure she was really there. He gripped the wheel tighter, the thought gnawing at him. Was it her, or another message from the people who'd been pulling the strings all along? The road away from the docks was empty, the city lights distant and hazy through the salt air. Noi hadn't moved, her reflection in the side window as still as the water they left behind. "She's alive," Daniel said, more to himself than to her. Noi's voice was quiet, almost resigned. "If you saw her, then she's not gone. But if they let her be seen, detective, it's because they wanted you to see her." The truth in her words sat heavy between them. Every lead, every clue, every death. It had all been part of a design bigger than the case. And now, that design had him in its grasp. Daniel drove on, the fog thinning, the hum of the tires steady against the pavement. His mind kept replaying the pier, the glint of the serpent ring, the faint outline of a woman standing where she shouldn't be. Somewhere ahead, midnight was waiting, and with it, an answer he wasn't sure he wanted, but knew he had to face. In the distance, the first pale light of dawn began to break over the water.